here at the 2050 Watson Boulevard, the Curtis Center, for a great event. You're registered to vote. Now what?
Now what?
So this is a great topic. This is a community-based topic because there's a lot of things going on in the community as far as getting people to show up and show out. So we're here today to have these discussions to talk about the importance of voting. How can we encourage people to get out and vote? So we have joining us in partnership is Sigma Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. Also, this event is sponsored by 100 Black Men of Warner Robins, the chapter. So before we go ahead and get started, let me go ahead and get somebody to introduce our panel. We have a great panel here today. These women, I mean, I handpicked them because I feel like they are probably the most intelligent women that I know to talk about this topic. Also, then we just celebrate Women's History Month yesterday. So let's go ahead and get
Women's National Day. The whole month.
The whole month, yeah.
Women's National Day. Yeah. National Women's Day.
And I am surrounded by a phenomenal group of women sitting in front of me. As you can probably see from the audience, you will see. So let's go ahead and give it up for them as well. So as you can see to my right, one of the moderators here is Torri Jones. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Torri.
Greetings, everyone. Well, thank you, Soul Fresh Podcast, for allowing me to join you guys again on a podcast.
Appreciate it.
Looking forward to great discussion with the two of you all. And so, again, this is Brian King and Stephen Boykin. And I appreciate the opportunity to help just educate the people on the importance of voting. And we do a great job of getting people registered to vote, but then what happens next?
Yeah.
Why is it that they don't show up to the polls? Right. And so we want to talk about how do we get them to the polls? How do we let the community know the importance of voting and why they should be voting?
Right.
So I want to welcome all of our in-person as well as our virtual viewers. We have people that are watching live. And if you are watching live on social media, we're asking that you share this link with others. We are being streamed live on Facebook as well as on YouTube, so share it on your social media pages with your family and friends, or send a link via text message. This is some great information that will be shared, and like Brian said, that we have some excellent panelists here that's going to share some great information that we want to make sure that we share with the community, not just House and County, but abroad. So thank you. Let me introduce our panelists. So to my right, which would be your left, we have Ms. Fanika Miller, and I'm going to introduce them as well. We have Ms. Kristen Kiefer, and then we have Ms. Erica Williams. Ms. Fanika Miller is a respected figure in social impact leadership and entrepreneurship, amassing over 3 decades of experience in the political, private sector, and government spheres, including serving as one of Georgia's 2020 presidential electors. She currently serves as National Field Co-Director for Black Voters Matter Fund, guiding and supporting the teams in Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, and leading the healthcare and environmental justice outreach for the organization. Her dedication to social impact, advocacy for Black women and girls, and grassroots organizational capacity and power building with Black Voters Matters Fund has made an enduring impact on numerous Southern communities. This has positioned her as a notable champion for positive change and is a respected figure in her field. In December 2023, Fanika was selected to join the inaugural Economic Recovery Fellowship to ensure that unprecedented federal resources are invested and allocated in marginalized communities as intended. Fanika is the visionary owner of Succeed Co-work, the first co-working community and entrepreneur incubator for women in Houston County. Just in case you all didn't know, it's located on Watson Boulevard. Her enduring commitment to community development is evident through service on multiple boards and agencies where she contributes to fostering community and entrepreneurial success throughout the region. And Ms. Fanika, thank you and welcome, and I'll give you an opportunity to say a little bit more about yourself and your organization and how they can find out more about you.
Well, thank you, Torri, and thank y'all for having me this morning. See so many friends and sisters in the audience. As Torri shared, I work for the Black Voters Matter Fund, and my job is to increase Black voter engagement and political participation. And we do that by capacity building, investing in grassroots organizations across the state and across the South, and also by fighting back, which is our theme for this year. We support, not swoop, which means that we go through existing infrastructure, so organizations like yours who've been doing great social justice work for decades and for years. We help to provide many grants to your organization so that you can continue to do that good work and lean in even deeper and harder in communities. We believe that Black voters matter, which is what our shirt says, and not just Black votes, and that the 365 a day issues that affect Black people don't start or stop on Election Day. Messaging matters. I matter, you matter, we matter. It's about us. We make people believe that they have the power to change the outcome of any election, the dynamics of their communities, to shift resources. And we're also not afraid to speak to the race issue. And then the thing that attracted me to the organization is trust Black women. There is a certain reality that Black women deal with and still show up to vote. And 90% of our partner organizations across the South and across the 10 core states and 21 UJIMA states are led by Black women. And then finally, we are a Black power building organization. And we know that there is no path to victory or to building a more progressive, sustainable country that does not include Black voters. So I get to do this work all day long, every day. And thank y'all for having me.
Thank you, Fanika. Give her a hand. She shared some nuggets that really align with what the Advocate for Social Justice Committee with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority is doing. So thank you for sharing that, and hopefully we can partner with you going forward in the future. The next person that I would like to introduce is Ms. Kristen Kiefer. She is the Engagement Manager for Medicaid on the state and local campaigns team at American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. Ms. Kiefer is the Engagement Manager for Medicaid on the state and local campaigns team at American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, ACS-CAN. In this capacity, she leads community engagement initiatives in Georgia and Mississippi, emphasizing the empowerment of local leaders to serve as reliable sources of health policy information and amplifying the voices of rural Black and marginalized communities. Kristen has obtained her bachelor's degree in healthcare administration from Middle Georgia State University. Beyond her professional role, Kristen dedicates herself to community advocacy as the chairwoman of the Houston County Democratic Committee, where she concentrates on mobilizing voters and ensuring voter protection. She resides in Warner Robins, Georgia, alongside her husband and son. Thank you, Kristen, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, please share with us some more information about you and the organization and possibly ways that we can partner with you to get the vote out and get people more interested in understanding about voter registration.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me today. We talked a little bit about kind of both my professional work and my volunteer work here at the county level. So in my professional capacity, we work really hard to provide local leaders with the information that they need to educate their communities on why, policy, and in my case, Medicaid policy, is so important in our states. And we work to amplify the voices of people that are living in the coverage gap or, are under-resourced or have no resources altogether. And to kind of empower people to use their voices to make an impact, right, and to impact their legislators. Here at the local level, my predominant responsibility as the chairwoman of Houston County Democratic Committee is, 1, to recruit candidates to run for office, 2, to get people to go out and vote, and 3, the one that I think is the most important of all, is to protect that vote. And that means, asking people to sign up to be poll watchers or poll workers. That means asking people to come out and help us knock doors. You can find us on any social media platform at HocoDemsGA, and we've also got a website. And so if you're interested in doing any kind of volunteer work with any of your local political parties, you can find that information online. I think it's linked on the Board of Education's or the Board of Elections website as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Kristen. Kristen, you also shared some information which aligns with what we're doing, which is to encourage women, and in particular African-American women, to sign up to become elected officials, whether it be with the Board of Education, on the state, city, national level. So that's something that we definitely want to encourage, especially here in the Middle Georgia area, is to get women educated and excited about possibly running for office in any type of capacity, and that we support them and stand behind them when doing so. So thank you for sharing that information. The next person that I would like to introduce, which is our third panelist, is Miss Attorney Erica Williams. She was originally from Shaker Heights, Ohio. Attorney Williams began her legal career working as the juvenile prosecutor for the Houston County District Attorney's Office in 2002. She remained with the Houston County District Attorney's Office for over 18 years, handling all manner of cases, including serious violent felonies, elder and child abuse, and traffic cases. In 2004, she received her national certification in juvenile prosecution from the National District Attorneys Association. At the time, very few prosecutors nationwide held such certification. In 2010, she became the first Black woman to serve as president of the Houston County Bar Association. As president, she helped to initiate the annual Christmas toy drive that the bar continues to hold each year. In July of 2011, she was appointed as Chief Assistant District Attorney for the Houston Judicial Circuit, becoming the first Black woman to hold that position. In 2017, Attorney Williams was awarded the Justice Benham Award for Community Service, an award given by the State Bar of Georgia acknowledging service to the community outside of the practice of law. She was also recognized on the floor of both the Georgia House of Representatives and State Senate with resolutions acknowledging her work in the protection of victims of elder abuse. In 2020, she ran for district attorney, becoming the first Black woman to win the Democratic nomination and appear on the ballot for that office. Although she ultimately did not win her race, her willingness to run was a trigger for change in the office. After leaving the district attorney's office in 2020, she joined the Williams Law Group, where she had the opportunity to serve a brief term as juvenile court judge pro tem for the Houston Judicial Circuit. In 2023, she returned to full-time prosecution when she joined the Houston County Office of the Solicitor General, where she has been appointed Chief Assistant Solicitor General. Erica Williams is a life member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and has been a part of Sigma Epsilon Omega chapter for 20 years. She is also a member of the Macon chapter of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated and Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys. She currently serves as the advisory board for Central Georgia Technical College's Paralegal Studies program, and she is married to attorney Clarence Williams III of Warner Robins, and they are the proud parents of daughter Charlie and son Clarence IV. Ms. Erica, thank you for coming today, and please share a little bit more information because I shared many first as a Black woman. Yes. And before you even speak on that, I want to applaud you for that, just being the first Black woman to decide a book. So, Attorney Williams.
Well, thank y'all for having me here. I'm really excited. Those of y'all that know me know I am very passionate about voting. I'm very passionate about making sure that our community understands the importance of their vote and the importance of knowing how to vote, how to register, how to take a friend. So this is a great program because not only do we have a large group of women here today to get the information, but the fact that we are sharing it publicly hopefully will encourage other people to get registered, and we can talk about that a little more because it is not too late to get registered to vote for upcoming elections. And I'm not sure what else I can say about me. I feel like I even learned some things about myself.
Okay, well, that's great because we have plenty of time for discussion. Again, thank you. And I want to welcome again to our viewers that are tuning in live via social media. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you have not, please share this information with others on your social media sites via text message, phone a friend, text a friend, however you need to get it out. Let people know that you're registered to vote. Now what is on, and we're live right now. So to my co-hosts, Mr. King and Mr. Boykin, I want to get the discussion going as it relates to, we've gotten people registered to vote. Now what? We're all from the Middle Georgia area. We're actually all from Warner Robins, Georgia, born and raised here. And we have all actively participated in elections that have taken place here locally. And while we have been passionate in helping individuals to run for office, we have been very disappointed with the turnout from people not coming and not showing up to the polls to register to vote. Right. It could be because of inclement weather. It could be because they don't have transportation to get there. What are some things that you've heard? And we want to have some of our experts to then chime in on ways that we can try to circumvent those issues.
Well, let me go ahead and start. So Like most things that we see in our culture and our society, has changed from how we grew up a long time ago till now. What's happening now with the way I guess kids are being raised. So it's kind of something that's in you. So let me go ahead and explain that. So when I was growing up at 18, my parents were telling me that that's what I needed to do. So I think it has to start at home. That's the first place. And it also started at church. So that's what I went to First Baptist Church. Most of y'all know 210 Garmer Street. So that's where I grew up. We were having these discussions at our church as well. So I apply that to community. So you had home and you had community. Now, so if we get more people involved in the church talking about it and more people making it their responsibility to explain to their kids, even at a young age, that this is important to practice your civic duty, which is to get out and vote. So that's just my explanation, is that one of the reasons why I've been voting since I was 18 was because my parents, I saw them doing it, leading by example, but also they were telling me like, hey, you need to get out there and go vote. But which led me to also get involved into being a poll worker. So I did that at a very young age, and that is something you do get paid for it. So anybody young out there listening, when you're in your 20s or 21, 25, whatnot, you will get a check for participating in the polling process.
And you used to be a part of that process too. Remember, you used to go to the polling stations and all
Yeah,
that?
I did it for years, yeah. But as I did that also educated me as well, watching people come and vote, learning how the system works, learning how they collect the data, and so on.
And for me, per se, I've always wondered what other strategies can we come up with to get people out to vote. Piggybacking almost on what Brian said, what got me into voting more so than what he said with community and whatnot from the parental side. When I was in the service, the President Bush era was happening and things like that. So in my mind, I was like, do I really need to put my voice out there and vote at this time? And right then, it was a controversial moment because he was telling us in the military at that time, hey, I'm going to give y'all a pay raise. So it kind of made me sit back for the first time and think, do I really want this guy in office? Should I really vote? Or am I only looking at it for monetary gain for myself? So I think sometimes the strategies that need to take place are people need to sit down, think about why they're voting first, and then you proceed to go out and make sure you register first. Most of all, you don't even have to say you're going to go and vote, but at least first be registered. And I think that's what a lot of people, they just don't do it enough as they should.
Okay. So I'm getting text messages that I did not introduce myself. So I got caught up in just getting started.
I passed it on to you.
My name is Torri Durham, and I am the Advocate for Social Justice Committee Chair for the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Sigma Epsilon Omega chapter here in Warner Robins, Georgia. And as a chairperson, it is my responsibility to corral the sorors together to make sure that we educate the community about the importance of voting, as well as encourage people to go to the polls and register to vote. So that's me. Now, my early memories of voting was going with my parents as a little child, and that's when they used to have the blue curtains, and it was exciting for me just to get behind the blue curtain and to see them pushing the buttons. So from a child, I was exposed to it, and I think that some of the things that I've heard is exposure. Well, that's the key word that I think I heard, exposure. Exposure from the church standpoint, exposure from our parents and our grandparents, exposing the kids, because the truth of the matter is, while the majority of us in this room and the majority of the people that are watching are registered to vote, we're not the audience that we want to reach. We want to reach the audience of people that are not registered to vote, that are not being exposed to those types of things. So while we're hoping that today will be an educational forum where we invite people to learn more about the importance of voting, it doesn't just stop here. It's important that we share this information with others, and definitely share it with our children so that when their time comes, they're excited and encouraged to go and register to vote as well. I'll let you all share what your earlier experiences were with voting, and then we'll get to some of the questions that have been presented already. And also keep in mind, you are free to ask any questions. We have an audience that you can ask questions, and questions are also being submitted online. So we're taking questions to be answered and asked during this session.
So for me, I do have memories going to vote with my parents and, like you said, the blue curtain and all. But I didn't become an active voter until I was in my early 20s. So the first election that I participated in was when I was still living in Ohio, and it was Bush v. Gore. And I was so excited. I still have a picture in my scrapbook of me and my sticker and my thumbs up, and I was so excited and energized to vote. And then when the election ended the way that it did, it just really resonated with me, because it wasn't, to me, it didn't feel like that particular election was really decided by the voters. It was decided by the courts. And because if you don't have a good understanding of how, when you have these contests, what happens if the voters don't make a decision, then someone else is deciding for you, it can really put a sour taste in your mouth. For me, it was more of an energizer, and it helped me. The vice president, would take over, but then who would become vice president? Do you know what our Constitution says about what happens in those circumstances? And so for me, it sparked a passion for learning the answer to those questions.
For me, I think, my parents kind of encouraged me to register to vote, as soon as I was able to do so. And my first presidential election was the 2004 presidential election, and I have voted in every presidential election since. But I think the turning point for me, when I really got more involved and engaged in advocacy, I know my friend here was on the ballot at one point. A lot of it for me had to do with when I started paying attention to what our state government does and what our local governments do. And, learning that, this particular policy that affected my life personally wasn't something that was decided by a presidential election. It was, kind of the realization again that Congress makes the laws and that we need to vote in between the presidential elections. And that just because, something is protected in one state doesn't mean that it is in another. And your rules can be, your laws can be different. Perry doesn't have the same laws as Warner Robins, right? And so that's what kind of clued me in to getting more active and making sure that I was voting in every election, not just the presidential elections. And the more I kind of got involved in that and learned more about each of those positions, the more it made me want to be engaged all the time.
Awesome. What about you, Fanika?
Yeah, my experience is a little bit different from everybody that has come down the line already. My parents did not encourage me to vote. They were, in the early 80s, growing up, Reaganomics, crack epidemics, PAPS closed. My dad worked at PAPS. My favorite cousin was a community organizer. And so my parents were the first of my immediate family to go to integrated schools. Their focus was, after civil rights, is we gonna go out here and get this money. We're gonna get these jobs. We're gonna get us a house. We're gonna do these things. They were disconnected from that movement completely. My grandparents and my cousin Charlene were the ones who were active and who were engaged. And Charlene is the one who introduced me to community organizing to get Black political representation and to understand who pulls the lever of power in our communities and how those things can impact and change the conditions in our communities, in our education system, and just expanding access for Black people. And so that was, 14. My peers who grew up in the same community in Perry that I did, their parents were not engaged, right? And so it's my parents, me, my peers, and now my peers who have children, and they have grandchildren. And so that's 3 generations of folks who were proximate to me that we're dealing with now, who are low propensity and infrequent voters who have not been engaged in the process. And so the nonpartisan work really introduced me to, again, the activism, the engagement, the importance. And I'm one of those super voters now, y'all. I don't miss an election. I think since I was 19, if somebody changed the line in the street, I'm going to vote. And that's the same way that I think we have to look at the process of how we can help people connect the levers and the dots. And then once they're registered, how do you then lean into your voting power?
Awesome. I think there was some great information that was shared, and the reason I wanted everybody to kind of give their insight as to what their exposure was to voting is because everybody's voting experience is different, and people need to hear that. You know, some people will say, well, you know, my family didn't vote, so I don't need to vote. Well, we've heard from someone who said that they didn't grow up with family members who did vote, and so even though their family members didn't vote, it did not stop them from, you know, registering to vote. So everybody has a civic duty to get registered to vote and to then make your vote count and make it matter. Something else that was brought up about when you heard that they were changing the lines in the street. It's important for us to be present at the city council meetings. You know, we have to be more visible at these city council meetings. We have to be more visible at the Board of Education. We can do have a lot of conversation rather about things that we have issues with, problems that we have. But if we're not there to sit at the table to voice our concerns, then how are we really helping to make matters any better? So the first question that I was given that I would like to see addressed is, does my vote actually matter? We go out and we register people to vote, and a lot of times, especially with the young people, does it really matter if I vote? I mean, what difference does it make if I vote? There's so many people voting, just what will my one vote matter? And so I would like whomever to jump in and speak on that. Does my vote actually matter?
It absolutely matters, and I will give you a perfect example.
Come on, Erica.
I'm not even talking about myself. I'm not even talking about myself, but we just had an election for the city of Warner Robins that was decided by one vote. One vote. And I know that people know at least one person who shrugged it off and said, well, you know, my vote doesn't matter. I'll catch them next time. They don't need my support. One vote is what decided a race between two very different candidates. And so, yes, your vote absolutely matters, because not only does it help, even if you're not part of the winning team, it still matters because it helps shape policy. Right. So people that are elected have a desire to be reelected, and they start to move as the winds of change move. So if they start to see shifting trends in how we vote, they too will start to shift. Like if you look at marijuana legalization, right? There was a time where it was like, we're never going to legalize marijuana. Well, times are changing. Georgia's one of the slowest changers, but they are slowly changing, and now they are passing legislation in certain cities where they are decriminalizing it and making it into, now that is not any place here in Houston County, it's still illegal, I'm just going to remind you of that. But they are moving to in some places to decriminalize it and change the penalties for it. And again, that would not happen if people weren't going out and telling elected officials, this is what we want to change. So absolutely, even if you're the person that you want to win doesn't win, your vote still matters.
That's good.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go with the next question, but before I get started, let's go ahead and do some house maintenance real quick, just to acknowledge our sponsors again. It's the 100 Black Men of Warner Robins. It is a new chapter. It was founded in July of 2023, and so they pretty much promote. I am a member as well. They promote mentoring, specifically mentoring across a lifetime through the Junior 100, STEM 360, Collegiate 100, and College and Career Pathways 1, 2, 3. So they also encourage all youth to expand their educational horizons by promoting our annual college and career fair. So every year there's a college career fair. So I see a lot of faces in here. So I will see you next time, right? When we put that information out there. All right, so I want to see y'all. Additionally, we also actively engage in the community with various health and wellness programs. And so once again, that is the 100 Black Men of Warner Robins brand new chapter. So I'm gonna leave this open for the panel. Anybody can grab it. What are the most significant barriers to voter registration currently faced by eligible voters, and how can these be effectively addressed at both the policy and grassroots level?
Many barriers to registering to vote. Identification can be an issue, or even getting down to, I mean, even, with the free voter ID, there's the issue of getting yourself to, the DMV to get that identification. There is the fact that there are, arbitrary kind of gates around when you can and cannot register to vote in a particular election. Like for example, the cutoff to register to vote in the March 12th primary, which is coming up, was like a month ago. So if you register to vote today, you wouldn't be eligible to vote in that election, but you could in the next one. Things like that. I mean, we should have same-day voter registration. That's one simple change that we can make that would allow someone who's able to show up with their documentation to register to vote that day and be able to vote that day. That would be something simple that we could do. Kind of in a broader picture, public transportation in our community would help out a lot with getting people to the polls or getting people to the places that they need to be able to register. And that's one of those things that you can kind of vote for the people who will or won't choose that. And I will defer to one of y'all because I know that you have a lot more to say on this than I do.
Well, the only other thing that I would add, in addition to some of the barriers that Kristen already laid out, is that until we get uniformity from the federal government for a voting rights bill, then we're going to always see fluctuations, whether that is state by state, jurisdiction, or municipality by municipality, or county by county, rather. So we still need to make sure that we apply the right pressure on the right people to make sure that we get those good policies in place. I wanted to share the voter registration data for Houston County.
Okay.
We have 37,569 Black registered voters. We have over 116 or so thousand registered voters in the county, but 37,569 Black registered voters in the county, 9,379 of which have never voted. 9,855 are infrequent voters, which means that they may vote every cycle, maybe once every 4 years, just enough to stay active and on the rolls. And 11,898 frequent voters who vote in general elections. Only 6,437 Black super voters in our entire county, which means that these folks don't miss an election. That's probably most of us in this room, right?
Right.
We have over 2.3 million Black registered voters in the state of Georgia. 617,000 have never voted, are on the rolls and have never voted, and 635 who are infrequent. That's over 1.2 million of the Black people who are registered to vote, and that's enough for us to flip any seat, to change the dynamics anywhere that we want to up and down the ballot, right? 9,379 registered Black voters in Houston County who have never voted.
Wow.
And I just want to leave that there because we don't have a registration issue. We do have a mobilization issue.
I agree. I agree.
Now, I have a quick question right quick before you go, Torri. There's this phrase that we hear all the time, voter suppression. Do you feel voter suppression has deterred people from showing up to the polls, and what is it that we can do to help prevent this from happening? And that goes to any one of you.
Yes, and it's not just voter suppression by way of policies that are enacted. It's also disinformation, misinformation that's targeted at Black voters, particularly 18 to 35-year-old Black voters. Just recently, we saw how AI can impact public perception, right? We saw 5 young brothers in a picture with he who shall not be named, but who used to occupy the White House. In the hood, that was Photoshop. We also saw, last month, another Photoshop article that showed, folks registering Black people, but the man had 3 arms, right? And so we have to be cognizant not only of policies that are enacted, but also what we are consuming by way of media, of radio, and what we're seeing on digital platforms that serve to misinform and disinform communities that can also help to depress the vote. So I think we just need to be cognizant of those things.
Real quick,
And
Tamika.
Your mic forward.
Well, both of y'all can answer this real quick. I just wanted to piggyback on that. If you could, for the audience on the live, other people that may be listening, and for people in here that may not know, can you give some examples of voter suppression, what it looks like?
Well, for me, I would say some examples would be 2 to 3 hour waits in line. And you can see that right here in the city of Warner Robins. I remember when I was running, I think I stood in line an hour and a half to early vote. And that is a form of suppression because if you drive around the corner and you see people from one end of the Houston Pavilion to the other end, a lot of people aren't going to wait in that line.
No.
Especially if the weather is inclement, if it's raining. So that is a form of, to me, is a form of voter suppression. And of course, there's also not calling special elections when you are constitutionally required. That's another form of voter suppression. But yeah, there is definitely voter suppression.
I think voter intimidation is another form of voter suppression. I spend a lot of time hanging out at polling locations. You would not imagine the type of things that we see there. You might run into candidates in places that they're not supposed to be. You might see, people campaigning too close to the building. You might see voters who prefer one candidate over the other doing some sort of harmful behavior to people. I mean, I think during the 2021 runoff, we saw a lot of, targeted intimidation tactics. Someone standing, just outside of, where they were allowed to stand with a weapon, or here at Houston County, a pavilion, somebody kind of like dangerously whipping through the parking lot in their vehicle, screaming at people. Things like that. When you intimidate people, they tend not to come back to the polls, or some of them might get in their car and leave right then. Or, that might cause them, if they are in fear of, like I said, let's say an elected official who's there, that may cause them to, feel like they need to vote for a particular candidate and not another. All of those things impact the way that our elections turn out.
Pulling a gun out on people who are passing out food and water at the polling location, which
just
happened in
about to get on that.
2020. The first day of early voting in 2020. The first week, typically, there's only one polling, back in 2020, one polling location, which is down in Perry. The first day of early voting in the 2020 presidential election, there was a 9-hour wait. It was extremely hot. Passing out water became illegal after that. We had folks to pull out a gun on some of our volunteers in Albany, Georgia, and they had to go and defend themselves before the state elections board, right? Intimidation is at an all-time high. To remediate the long lines, our state can change that, right? We can have voting centers where you can just go vote. You ain't gotta have a precinct. Same thing that we do during early voting. Right? We don't have to, long lines are intentional.
Is the giving out food and water still a criminal act? Are they still considering that a criminal act?
You can do it within 150 feet of a polling location, right?
That's part of SB 202, right?
SB 202,
All right.
Yes.
So let me ask you this. So if I'm in a situation where I go to a polling location and they say, okay, these 3 machines, they just stopped working. Sorry. So now you only got 1 voting machine. Me as a citizen, what do I do then? Who do I contact and what do I do?
Hey, so we should, hopefully, we will see more of this in the future, but there should be at least, at any given time, 4 observers in the room. Each political party gets their own, so I think candidates can bring their own. There should be volunteers outside whom you can stop and speak to and say, hey, this is happening to me. There are multiple voter protection hotlines. I know there's, is our vote 888 or 866?
866 or 877.
Yeah.
Should get a shirt.
I should, with the voter protection hotline on it. But so call one of the voter protection hotlines. Let someone know. You can call your local board of elections and say, "Hey, I was just in here and this happened. Can you help me figure it out?" You can ask for the poll manager and lodge a formal complaint with them. There's a lot that you can do. But I would say look out for the helpers and know what your resources are.
Don't leave.
Yeah,
Don't leave.
But that will say don't leave. But that's why I also encourage people to early vote.
Yes.
Because if you early vote, you do not have to go to your assigned polling location. So that cuts that. There's assigned polling locations do change, and if they change, they do have to make attempts to notify you about it. But if you go to the wrong polling location, there's a possibility that even with the provisional ballot that your vote will not count. So it is best for you to go during these periods of early voting. Houston County did a great job this time with the presidential primary preference vote. having multiple locations for early voting. That I tell my mother-in-law is here, I tell her all the time, go vote in Perry at the Board of Elections, because it is rarely crowded, and it is very accessible for people that have mobility issues. You can literally pull your car right up and wheel yourself in if you need to. But I prefer to tell people to do early voting, and then that way you can also take a friend later.
And it's the most convenient for working people because they're now required, there's 3 weeks of early vote, and you've got the 9 to 5 hours, but there are 2 mandatory Saturdays now for each election. And that's definitely, the Saturdays are the ones where you definitely want to say, I'm going to go vote today. Will you come with me? And you talk to your family members or your church members or your sorority sisters, stroll to the polls, exactly. Or, we should also it's possible in many states to vote 7 days, or in many counties in Georgia to vote 7 days a week during early voting. Like that Sunday voting is available. That's something that we're going to need to work on our local Board of Elections to change if we'd like to have that here. Not having it is an intentional choice in many places.
Houston County does not have Sunday voting. Mm-hmm. We're one of the counties that does not have it.
Yep. Correct.
All right, so like here we're surrounded by several members of the community considered organizations. So we have Alpha Kappa Alpha, we have Omega Psi Phi, Kappa Alpha, Kappa Alpha Kappa. Kappa Alpha Psi, I'm sorry. We have 100 Black Men. We have Masonic organizations. My point is, Jack and Jill, we have several organizations. So, what role can community organizations and local leaders play in increasing voter turnout, and how can partnerships between these groups and electoral bodies be strengthened?
So, most of the organizations that you listed have to remain impartial, nonpartisan. Right. So what we can do as members of these organizations, we can't necessarily support a candidate for office, but we can definitely encourage voting. We can encourage, we can have programs that encourage people to learn how to vote, voter registration tables. I know our chapter routinely has voter registration programs at the mall. To get people signed up to vote. Mm-hmm. We can use our social media platforms to share the dates and times of upcoming elections, share the address for the Georgia My Voter page. If you all do not know, the Georgia My Voter page is the page that you go to verify your registration status. You can also find out if you don't know who your actual elected officials are, you can pull, I have mine here with me today, you can pull up your precinct card and print it out, and it'll tell you who your congressional representative is, who your district attorney is, who your sheriff is, all those local offices if you don't know who they are. So you can create pictures with the Georgia My Voter page information on and share them from your social media platforms. There's a lot of stuff that you can do that is not even considered like real boots on the ground stuff, but you can also do boots on the ground. Like we can get out into neighborhoods and we can knock doors. We may not knock doors and say, hey, let's vote for this candidate, but we can knock on doors and say, hey, did you know there's an election coming up? And did you know where you need to go vote? And do you know your registration status if you think you're registered? And answer any general questions they may have about voting.
Right.
I love that. I'm going to sound like a bad party person here, but I actually think that nonpartisan issue organizing is the most kind that the most important kind of organizing you can do. Talk to the people that you know about the things that matter to you and the things that matter to them. One of the most important things that I think all of us do is get out there and knock on doors, right? Yeah. You can ask, do a block walk. Like ask each of your members to talk to just the people on their block. Break it up into small pieces so it's manageable and say, will you go ask your neighbors, what is most important to them right now? You can use that information to then shape your strategy about how you're going to speak, how you're going to talk to people, and to, what issues you need to inform them about for which elections. So, for an example, I tell a lot of people that healthcare is on the ballot a lot of the time because in Georgia it always is until we change some of our policies.
And just to piggyback on that too, outside of Greek letter organizations and community-oriented organizations. I know in this audience, I'm looking out now, I know we have some members of Fellowship. I know we have some Beulah Land. I know we have First Baptist. I know we have Hope Church. Talk to your pastors and make sure that the important information about voting is included in your church announcements. Like they literally have announcements at church about what's going on in your community, and there is rarely anything as important as your ability to vote. And again, you're not choosing a side. You're not asking your pastor to say, hey, let's vote for Sarah for dog catcher. What you're asking your pastor to do is please remind your parishioners or your church members that the election is coming up. Make sure you know where you're supposed to vote. Make sure you know that you have your government issued ID to take with you when you go. Again, it's real easy. It's not difficult to do, to get that information out to lots of people. Your churches, there used to be a time the church would use their resources to get people to vote. They would load up buses in a nonpartisan way and say, hey, we're rolling to the polls after church. We're gonna eat our meal. We're gonna have our church. We're gonna eat our meal, and then we're gonna go vote. You can still do that. You could do it on an early voting day.
Let me ask you about that real quick. So maybe one of you can answer that. Why did that change? Because like I told you, when I was growing up, there was a time when we were doing that. So we were very, very involved in the voter process. But from what I hear, you can let me know if this is true, churches tend to shy away from being involved in voter because they get their money pulled away because they get federal grant money, right?
You have to stay nonpartisan. You can't say we're all gonna load up in this bus and vote for Obama.
But being involved though, so why do you think they stopped being involved?
I don't think that they have. I don't think you see it as much. But I think some of them are a little bit concerned about them losing that 501, if they have a 501c3. But they could create a 501c4 if they wanted to do political action. But you really want to keep politics out. We want to keep church and state separate, but we want to. It is okay to use to offer. You can offer places for nonpartisan voter engagement. Right. If you have a community room, a resource center, you have a gym that you can use. If you have a church van or whatever, as long as you're doing it in a nonpartisan way, then that's okay. If you don't think that some of these other churches are doing this, they've been doing it. There used to be a time where every elected official in this county came from a certain church. Okay, so they know how to do it. It is nonpartisan. We're not choosing sides. We're just getting voters to the place. We're not telling them how to vote. We're not telling them who to vote for, but we're helping them harness their power to vote.
Because Erica said it so nicely. Listen, most black churches are not 501c3s. There's no reason for that level of lack of political or nonpartisan participation. And that's just a fact. There is a narrative that has been spread around to intimidate folks into lack of engagement. And so let's just be real honest with it, y'all. We have a challenge in our communities where you see this lack of voter participation. You see churches that are full. You see black women, predominantly black women, who are funding new buildings, investing, paying tithes, and we are not getting a return on that investment beyond a spiritual word on Sundays. Black women have the highest health disparity rates. Black women are literally dying to have children. One of my team members yesterday is postpartum and lost her 2-month-old child. But we have a bill that's stalled in the legislature around maternal mortality that our governor and our Senate are refusing to push. We have economic injustices, wage gap. We have housing injustices. Georgia does not have rent control. Right? We live in Houston County, which is funded by the base, but outside of the base, the school system and the hospital, we are a low-wage service industry economy. We don't have a livable wage in Georgia. The state minimum wage is still $5.15. Every church, every black church needs to have a civic engagement coordinator. period. And we need to be talking about these issues. We can't sell a candidate, but we can sell these issues. We can mobilize our folks beyond a souls to the polls on Sunday or strolls. Go get your absentee application and use that fax machine that my tithes paid for, and let me send these applications back or print these out so folks can have them. And I think it comes down to us demanding, we have to get unaccustomed to positional power. Preach. And start placing a demand on the power and the access and the resources that we need and that we deserve. I hope y'all invite me back.
Absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to touch on something, and it was kind of talked about earlier, and it coincides with us because the title of our program is You're Registered to Vote, Now What? I had a conversation with an older gentleman, and he was sharing with me that we were just talking about, I get people registered to vote. My committee gets people to register to vote. But then I was very alarmed when helping you and working with you on your campaign. That was when I was really exposed to a lot when Erica was running for district attorney for Houston County that she doesn't want to talk about. And when I think it was Fanika who shared the results after the election of how a certain pocket in Houston County just did not come out to the polls to vote. And so I was sharing this with an older gentleman when I was in Atlanta, and one thing he was saying to me, and it coincides with what I heard this lady who's a Native American say, and I want to speak more so from her perspective than anything else. She says, people want to come into the Native American community and tell them what they're supposed to do. This is how you need to live. This is what you need to be doing. And she said they find it to be very disrespectful when outsiders come in and tell them and dictate to them how they should be living their lives. And it coincides with the conversation that I had with this older gentleman when he said that you need to go into those communities and find out what affects them. What are the issues that they're having? What are their concerns? Because when you then find out what their concerns and their issues are, and then you tie that to what the issues are on the political level, it helps them to correlate the difference between their vote does matter. They do need to go and vote. So when you provided those statistics for Houston County, and you're very much aware of the pockets within Houston County that do not and did not come out to vote. Right. What are some of the concerns or issues that you're aware of that they have? And if you're not aware of them, what are some suggestions that you can give us on how we can become aware of their concerns and how we can educate them on, when your child goes to jail, it's important that you elect a district attorney on the local level, because people that sometimes look like us, that are concerned about us, are the ones that we want to place in office, because those are the advocates that are going to fight for us. But you're just looking at it as, this person doesn't matter. And it's not to say that this person is going to always side with you, but you want someone that's going to look deeper into the situation and not on a top level base. So what are some suggestions on how we can get them more engaged and understanding that yes, your vote does matter because these issues do affect you and your community and your surrounding areas?
Remember earlier I said messaging matters, I matter, you matter, we matter, and supporting local infrastructure. We have to shift away from just electoral organizing 6 weeks or 4 weeks before an election. That's why I never thought I would get paid to do what I do, because this is what I do 365 days a year, and I would do it for free, y'all. This community and power building, seat switching, political participation is 365-day-a-year work. People are tired of folks coming to them, whether it's a candidate, a political party, or whoever, and saying, we need you to go vote. If I'm at someone's door asking you to register to vote, and I don't acknowledge the lived conditions that you are experiencing, that you have an $800 a month light bill, that you have raw sewage in your front yard, that you don't have any sidewalks, no access to food security or good food options in your hospital, that there's no public transportation, and I'm still looking at you talking about, I need you to register, people died for you to go vote. Those things don't resonate. People are trying to survive. So we're gonna have to shift the way that we speak to and engage communities. we also have to shift our perspective around who is and who is not voting. I can go to a church, and Kristen and I can pull this on a Sunday, and probably a third of the people sitting beside you have not voted. And we have a perception that it is lower income and marginalized folks and folks who live on certain sides of town who are not voting, and that is just not the case. Right? And so we've got to shift the narrative. And we can no longer afford to vote shame because of the mass exodus and the lack of trust within our institutions, whether that's a political party or a church or faith, civic organizations. People don't want to hear that. And Gen Z and millennials, they want all the power now, and I'm not mad at them. Right? They want to see things change. They are tired of experiencing the systems on top of systems on top of systems that are seeking to oppress and stand in the way of progress. And when we have folks in elected office within our community, whether they look like us or not, right, who are passing harmful legislation, and then we're still inviting them into our space and making nice and acting like they didn't just pass SB 202. Right? We got to start having real honest conversations within ourselves and get back to thinking about, do I want some position of power for myself because I want to be comfortable, or am I going to try to move the needle for the collective? And that does involve traditional GOTV. We can't afford to have, we're in a state of emergency in our democracy, y'all. And we can't afford for 15 people to be knocking on 30,000 doors in an election cycle or 365 days a year. We can't afford for Green Street or Miss Gigi's group to be making all the phone calls in Houston County around issues. We've got to be engaged, we've got to be intentional, and we have to be strategic, because other folks are looking at the long game. We're hopping from election cycle to election cycle. They already have a 2026 plan, right? And here we are still on November 2024. So we have to shift our perspective. We have to have real honest conversations, and we have to start placing demands on power. Folks want to see change manifest now. If I live in a community that is marginalized and nothing has changed on my block for the past 20 years, why would I believe that I have voting power?
Right.
Now, I did a quick polling yesterday at my job. This is just something real quick that came in my mind when you were talking about that issue. I just went around asking people, hey, are you registered to vote? Yeah, I am. I'm registered to vote. Okay, but I can't. I was like, oh, why can't you vote? Well, I have a misdemeanor.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, who told you that just because you have a misdemeanor, you can't vote? Oh, I thought that's what it was. That's what I've always learned. How is it that we can properly educate people, older and younger, to know that depending on what criminal status you have or whatnot, there's differences between felonies and misdemeanors and what you can and cannot do when it comes to registering to vote or voting? How do we get that message properly told?
And that's good. We're asked that often.
Well, you really just have to really be able to explain, just for general purposes, understanding what even the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor is. So in Georgia, a felony is a crime that is punishable by up to a year in jail, up to $1,000 in fines generally. Sometimes there's some misdemeanors that are high and aggravated, so the fine goes higher. Being convicted of a misdemeanor does not impact your ability to vote at all. It doesn't impact your ability to exercise your civic duties, to serve on juries. Now, in Georgia, a felony is anything that is punishable by more than a year in prison or fines greater than $1,000. Why that's important is because while you are under sentence for a felony crime in Georgia, you cannot exercise your right to vote. Once you have completed your sentence, or as the young folks say, get completely off paper, you can, in fact, vote. If you're not certain, you can get what's called a certificate of completion from your probation officer. And the certificate of completion will give you written documentation that you have satisfied the terms of your felony sentence and that you are, in fact, eligible to vote. Does that make
Oh,
so?
yeah.
And what I also like to encourage people to do is there's a great resource called the Georgia Justice Project. And the Georgia Justice Project has a lot of information on getting your records sealed or expunged, reestablishing your civil rights, letting you know how and when you can vote, if you have any concerns about whether or not you can vote. But another confusing thing is that you could be under a felony sentence but not be a convicted felon. And if you are under a felony sentence with a deferred adjudication because you're doing it under first offender, then you actually can vote.
Oh, okay.
So if you're not certain, or if you have a family member who may have a felony that they may be under supervision for, if they're on first offender, they actually can vote. But if they're on regular felony probation, they cannot vote until they have successfully completed the terms of their probation. Now, the interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about is that some people with these long sentences can apply to have their probation terminated early. Yes. And if they get their probation terminated early, they can vote. And the Georgia Justice Project also has some great information on that as well, because there are, in Georgia, our felony sentences can be 20 years for burglary, very lengthy sentences, and you could have served most of it, and you may not realize that you are entitled to at least attempt to get your record, get your sentence ended early.
Yep, that's SB 105. I believe that is. And I can get some information to y'all on that too. And then I would say, even like people who are in the detention center, if you haven't been convicted, you can still vote.
Right.
And we miss that population oftentimes as we're thinking about community, right? And so I just wanted to share that as well.
All right, so real quick, we want to go ahead and open it up to the floor just to see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, good. Awesome.
My name is Angela King Anderson, and I actually just qualified to run for Superior Court Clerk this year in Houston County.
Awesome.
I have a two-part question. The first part of the question is, what is the biggest challenge in getting people to get out and vote? And the other part of that question goes back to Erica was talking about voter suppression and the long lines. And in 2020, I also ran, and I was in the line for 2.5 hours, and I almost gave up and wasn't gonna vote for myself. So is there any way that Houston County and the city could get more polling places so that the lines aren't as congested?
Well, I'll answer the first part of the question, but before I want to say thank you to Angela for putting herself out there and running.
Yes.
What you are doing is so important, and I also see other people that are elected officials. Larry Curtis is back here. Tina Fletcher has run for office before. We stand, those of us that have run before, we stood on your shoulders when we ran. And so as a former candidate, I am grateful that you are here and that you are continuing to shake things up in Houston County by trying to breathe some fresh air into some of our offices. I think what we can do to get more people excited is to let them know that we're running, but also make sure that they have the information that they need to vote. I can't tell you how many people came up to me after the election and was like, hey, you're Erica Williams and you're running for DA. I can't wait to vote for you. And I'd be like, hey, you were 2 months too late, but thank you. Thank you very much. So we need to make sure that people that, especially if they will be likely voters for you, that they know when they need to vote, that they understand when the election is, that they know if they don't know where their polling location is, that we give them the information for them to find it or tell them about how easy it is to early vote. And I think that will sort of give us some excitement. The unfortunate thing is a lot of these offices that are on the ballot are just not exciting. And it's no offense to the clerk's race or anything like that, but they're not as sexy as like president or congressman or whatever. So we have to find ways to make it exciting. We have to make people understand what happens in these positions. Why is the clerk's race important? What goes on at the clerk's office? Why is it important that you have, competent clerks that do what the law requires them to do, or why isn't we're getting ready to have a new sheriff in Houston County.
Yeah.
And if you all don't, generally speaking, understand the power that the sheriff, not the district attorney, the sheriff is the most powerful person in the county, and we haven't had a new one in 50 years,
yes.
and we are about to have a new one. And if you all don't know who's running and what they represent, that I can't impress on you the importance of finding out who these candidates are, what they stand for, what they don't stand for. Make informed decisions when you vote. And you're not just looking, I mean, you know, I'm not one of those just pick a certain party. I have voted across lines. Now, I tend to vote for one party more than the other, but that's because that party aligns with my values. But we have to educate ourselves so that when people say things like, I'm going to use this is nonpartisan, I'm going to use this as an example. A lot of people say, well, why should I vote for our president? He hasn't done anything for our people. You need to be able to say, if you support the president, you need to be able to say, well, actually, yes, he has. And these are these three things. And don't let some has-been rapper sit there and tell you that that they are not doing stuff for you when they don't even have the information to make a qualified answer to this. Like, I can sit here as a person who had their student loans forgiven.
Exactly.
And that would not have happened but for this change in administration, because the previous administration, and I'm going to just say this, I'm going to get off my soapbox about these student loans, but the student loan, the public student loan forgiveness program, was a bipartisan law. Bipartisan means Republicans and Democrats voted for it, passed it back when Bush was president, to give people who take lesser salaries working for public interest careers, like prosecutors, police officers, teachers, who pay on their loans for a certain period of time, to have the balance forgiven after they meet certain qualifications. Now, the prior administration, when it was their time to administrate that program, made it extremely difficult for people that qualify for this program to get the forgiveness that they earned. Now that we have a different administration, they're trying to make people feel bad as if they were being given something for nothing. People will say, well, why should I pay off your student loans? First of all, you're not paying off my student loans. I earned my forgiveness by working a community-based job. But that's a perfectly good example, because they're trying to say that this president is giving away something for nothing, when number one, it was a bipartisan program that we've already agreed, that's already been voted on, right? And two, you don't get it unless you actually paid on your student loans. So you have to be prepared when people say stuff like that to push back. You know, I know there's a lot of people that are very passionate on reparations. And there's a lot of people that say, I'm never going to vote because we're never going to get reparations. And that's fine. I'm never going to be able to convince those people other ways. But not showing up to vote is just not, it's not the answer. I am a harm reducing voter, because I am blue in a sea of red. Well, we're getting purple, but I am a blue person in a sea of red. So I have voted harm reduction for years. I will look at these candidates and decide which candidates' policies will do me and the people that I love the least bit of harm. I'm just gonna not cede my vote just because I don't see someone that aligns with all of my values. It's not a marriage. It's not a marriage.
It's a vote, not a Valentine.
Yes.
And it's important to remember that inaction is a choice.
Yep.
That is a direct action. Whether or not you vote for any of these folks, one of them is going to decide. Well, you know, somebody's going to decide how much your water bill is going to cost you, whether you vote for them or not. Somebody is going to decide, you know how much whether or not the city comes and fixes your plumbing, you know, in some cases, or who else has access to it, or how much stress gets put on the system. That's a decision made in a local vote. And when you choose not to vote in the elections, that is also a choice. All politics are local and all politics are personal. And I know that you got something to say, so I'm going to get out the way.
I'm okay.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that we all know the effect of the non-voter, because in 2018, we could have had a very different governor that was determined by 54,000 votes. We know that in 2022, we could have had a very different governor. We know that had it not been for the youth vote, you know, Senator Warnock would not have been reelected against a man who was not qualified to be on the ballot, right? That is the effect of the non-voter. We talked about how many black registered non-voters that we have in our county. Imagine, magnify that by 159 counties across the state, right? We could have very different healthcare system, very different investment in our K through 12 public education, very different outcomes in public universities, very different political appointees in some of these boards, right? And at the local level. Yeah, we gotta be more, definitely be more informed, engaged. We have to know that ballot like the back of our hand. The theme this year is no cap. That means know the current state of political affairs in your community, when the elections are, who's on the ballot, what the deadlines are. We have to assess the political landscape. Are the folks in office that we have elected who look like us or not using their power for good? And if they are not, y'all, we need to flip those seats and we need to hold them accountable. And then we need to prepare ourselves to be engaged, to be intentional, to be in strategic around how we help to work on these 365 issues and get our folks out to vote.
Do you think it goes far enough as to say maybe people should start being incentivized to show up at the polls to go vote? Has it gotten to that extreme?
We are incentivized. I want to breathe clean air. That's an incentive for me. I want my child to go to a school that's not crumbling and has good books and have high-paid educators, right? I don't want all my resources to go to the Board of Education central office, right? I want to have good roads. I don't want to have potholes in my road where if I roll down and then I got to worry about my shocks and my struts and my brakes, right? And if I'm only making a certain amount of money or I'm a tipped earner, right? I'm paying my mortgage, my rent, or getting some food, right? We got to think about domestic care workers. We are in a sandwich generation where a lot of us have aging parents and children. Somebody got to care for folks, right? We don't need no incentive. We need to connect these issues back to the ballot so folks can understand how these things touch them and affect them every single day. From the rooter to the tutor, and everything in between. The clothes that you wear are impacted by some elected official making a policy decision about you. And we got to put it as plain as we can. We cannot talk over people's heads. We got to make that thing plain.
I think that's key, going back, like I said, to the communities and breaking it down so that they are able to understand it and not talking over their heads. I do want to thank you, Angela King, for asking the question and for being someone who's running for office and who's present today, because this was open to the public. So thank you so much. One question that somebody might be able to answer here: what does the clerk do? That's a local position, or maybe you can answer that, because some people may say, well, what is the clerk? You know, so what can you share or tell us exactly what does the role of the clerk do? And I have a comment in the comments which said that I've also learned that hospitalized patients can vote too, so that's something to keep in mind.
I didn't even think about it.
I didn't either. Yeah, that's a good.
They're getting the mic for her. Another thing that is important to note is know the deadlines for when you can request your absentee ballot, which is 11 days. It has to be requested 11 days before the election that you are requesting it for. So if you have aging parents that are still of their right mind and would like to vote, then you can get their absentee ballot and get it sent.
Okay, so the Superior Court clerk is out of the Superior Courthouse. They handle only felony cases. They're basically the backbone of the court system. This is where you file divorces, adoptions. This is where all the criminal cases are stored for the judges when they hold court. Any military people, it's hard to keep up with your DD 214. You can actually put that on file at the clerk's office, and when you need a copy of it, you can go get it. They also do passports. A lot of people don't know that you can go to the clerk's office and get your passport. This is where they have real estate records. Your deeds are held. So they're really the Superior Court Clerk's Office is really the backbone of the, I call it felony or Superior Court system. Without them, a lot of offices really can't function. And right now, I work for the Superior Court judges, and a lot of our work, or most of it, is relied upon what they do, and what they do has to be correct so that we can do our job. And so when it's not, it hinders us from moving along and doing what we have to do, and then we have to stop the process to fix whatever the issue is. So that's in a nutshell.
The numbers that the clerk's office keeps helps us determine whether or not we have the necessary judicial officials to handle our huge caseload. So we have needed a Superior Court judge, an extra Superior Court judge for years. And why that matters to you all, if you're trying to get a divorce so you can get remarried, you can't do it if you can't get in front of a judge, right? Or if you're someone that's charged with if you've been charged with a crime, and you're just sitting because we don't have enough judges here. That is why these races become important.
And we actually just qualified, so we will be getting a fourth judge.
Yeah.
But it is relied upon the numbers, and our numbers have not been going to the state, and they were not correct. So we've been off for a long time, but we've needed one for a long time. We just got a new case management system, so it will actually keep up with the numbers now. And if we ever need another one, we can have the numbers to get it.
I got a question for you. I kind of want to refresh your memory about something. Me and you did a video about 3-4 years ago. I relate everything to COVID, so I'm gonna say I think it was pre-COVID. One of the election times. So let's get back to the conversation on the importance of local elections. So in that video we did, you broke it down into a nice analogy about, I think you related to a starting five basketball team. Yeah, so I kind of want you to give that to them and to the people in the audience and on the live, and see if you can remember to break that down as far as knowing the political structure of the importance of lieutenant governor, governor, and those small elections that we miss out on. Because like Erica mentioned earlier, you know, a lot of people pay attention to the sexy election, which is the president, you know, and vice president. So let's bring it back down to home and see if you can make that make sense.
Oh yeah, that was in 2022.
Yeah.
That was he said pre-COVID. Our years again.
COVID got my time all messed up.
It was in 2022, it was the primary election, and we wanted to call that March, it was March Madness, or I can't remember what we said, right? And so we likened it to basketball, how you have so many teams playing against each other, and then, you know, you finally make it to the championship. We had a very robust and highly contested primary on the Democratic side, and folks wanted to know what was on the ballot. What does your Attorney General do? What does your Secretary of State do? What does the Lieutenant Governor's office do? And so we had a good time with the video on that. When we're on college campuses, we break it down for students in that same way. Especially if you're in a college and career and technical program, Secretary of State runs the corporation division. They sign off on your licenses. When you go get your nails done and you want to be cute and an esthetician, they sign off on those licenses. If you don't vote for anything else, you need to vote for the people that's going to make sure that you can get your bag, right? So what does Lieutenant Governor do? You know, they run the Senate. You know, the governor's race, and all the way down the ballot, even a utility commission. Right? Utility commissioners, in some states, counties across the state, they set those utility rates. We got some counties in the state of Georgia that have $800 to $1,000 utility bills a month. Right? We have a public service commission. Folks don't even think about how utilities are regulated in that way. Right? And so everything, we just try to break it down for folks to be able to understand. Your school board can set policy. They set the local policy. When you're talking to students, your school board member can help determine the dress code in your school, right? How much your school lunch is, how much your teachers get paid, right? Disciplinary policy. Are you gonna get the same discipline as your friend Kristen if you do the same crime? Oftentimes not. right? And so breaking it down where folks can understand each position on the ballot. Probate judge. You know, you don't get your life insurance if your stuff ain't filed correctly. If Big Mama die, right? Who's keeping the land deeds? There's a big issue with land theft and air property. Where do those records live? And so we have to, again, know, assess, and prepare ourselves and know how to communicate what these offices are for people that we are talking to and make them relatable to people.
So,
Oh, good, okay.
okay, and then
Question from the audience.
once we do that, we got a question from YouTube as well.
Good evening, how everybody's doing?
Hi.
Good evening.
My name is Yancey Brown. I'm a attendant here. And first, I want to say thank you so much for having this. I definitely have been enlightened and definitely received a lot of information. I decided to run for the school board of Houston County in Section 7, and thank you. And for me, I guess y'all kind of talked about a little bit, running for the school board is something that doesn't seem as sexy as people may call it, but it's very, very needed for people to get involved. And my question to you is, as somebody who is running, and also for anybody else who is interested, how do we get more people involved in looking at more local elections to where they can see that it's really a priority and how much it really affects them on an individual level? Thank you.
I talked to somebody about this the other day, or yesterday actually, at the office. There was a woman that I spoke to who was telling me that in her neighborhood, here in Warner Robins, one side of the street is in great shape, but directly across the street, her neighbors' yards are sinking in. And she wanted to know, who regulates those decisions? Who said it was okay to build this development here? Like, who gave that permission and that clearance? And I said, well, call your city councilman and ask. Call the mayor's office and ask. Check in with Public Works. And she told me, that she wasn't really political. And I was like, well, that's interesting because you just told me exactly how politics is into you. Your neighbors' yards have caved in, right? And now we need to know who's responsible for it and who allowed it to happen in the first place. That's what, you don't have to choose a political party. You don't have to choose a particular candidate or not, but do make sure that you get out there and vote in your best interest every time you are given the opportunity.
And I think you also have to find what resonates for your particular office. I know many of you probably familiar with the story of the young man in Texas who is being prohibited from going to school. He's been placed in school suspension because he wears his hair, the hair that grows naturally from his body, in braids. And that's a violation in Texas of whatever their school board policy is. So they're denying this young man his education. So there are local policies that are also things that can get people very excited. I talk to a lot of middle school moms of girls that don't think that the dress code is appropriate. They feel that it's sexist, and so those are some of those smaller issues that someone from the school board may want to talk to voters about. When it comes time to replace principals, the school board is involved in that. The curriculum, how much we're charging for lunch, how are we using federal funds that come to us? There's several, was it Title I schools where they're getting free and reduced lunch, and then there's other schools that don't get it at all. And that's something that has impacted me as a parent because my kids get and they want to eat everything. But those are the kinds of issues that you would reach out to talk to people about. Now, on the flip side, there are people that are really opposed to the CRT? Critical race theory, whatever the made up stuff was. It's not made up, it's a legitimate thing, but they talk about it in college and nobody's talking about it in elementary schools. But those issues to those people, because they have been told that that's an issue, it matters to those voters. And so those are the things that will motivate them to come and vote, because they'll say, well, we got to stop this critical race theory, right? They don't even know what it is, but they just know they don't like it. So, so you have to figure out what your county's critical race theory issue is, and then that will resonate, and that will get people motivated to vote.
Say, I'm sorry, leave that critical race theory alone. Don't even engage in the people.
I'm not saying actual critical race theory, but whatever that issue is.
I'm not,
because we have people on the school board that ran against it. They're running because they want to make sure that, and if you look at what happened in Florida, where people are objecting to learning about Black history, if you know me, I will tell anyone, Black history is American history, and it needs to be learned. It's not anything we need to run and shy away from. Of course it's uncomfortable. It should be uncomfortable. If it's not uncomfortable, we're going to run right into the same problems that we had before. But those are the types of issues that may excite people to come for a school board race.
I would also add, as you run for school board, and congratulations on qualifying, please make sure that you stand in the authority of a school board member. The school board, the superintendent, and the folks at central office work for the school board. And I would like to see an empowered school board who is questioning the expenditures, the procurements, the hiring policies, the diversity policies. I think that we need to talk more about those things, particularly to folks who are in this room who are concerned about education. And then when you're speaking to parents or, a different audience, so you're gonna have to tailor your message to a different audience. But I would just encourage you to be bold as a person who is running for school board, and know that when you get there, you work for the parents. You do not work for the school superintendent.
As a person with a child in Houston County Schools, to me, the most basic way to put it is that your school board decides who is in the classroom with your child all day. They decide, via the budget, how safe the building is that your child is in. They could decide what they're allowed to learn and what days they are on, they go to school and what days they don't, and how that works with your schedule. I mean, these are the people that decide who minds your child's safety all day, every day. So.
And sir, what is your name again?
Yancey Brown.
Yancey Brown, and you're running for school board?
School board District 7.
Okay, in District 7.
What are you about? Where is that?
It's at large. Isn't it at large?
It's at large.
It's at large.
Thank you for being here today. Okay, you have some questions?
Yeah, so there's a question on
YouTube.
On YouTube. Let's get that pulled up real quick. I got it right here. All right, so we got a question. We got a question from YouTube. Hi, my name is Armando. I'm a Houston County resident. My question is, what are your plans to reach out to voters with disabilities, such as providing resources for rides to the polls?
Hi, Armando. I know Armando, y'all. Armando, I'm going to ask for your help. I'm going to ask you what you think the best ways are to help with that. But I would say, everybody in this room, or watching from home or on YouTube, it doesn't have to be partisan. But in your personal capacity, figure out how you can get involved, whether that be for, volunteering with a party or for a candidate or through a nonprofit that, I know Ride Share to Vote. You can go to their website right now and sign up to be a driver. And we can use those, resources on Election Day to connect people that need rides to the polls, with those rides. And that's a great nonpartisan resource that's available to everyone.
And also helping them become engaged, for those that have mobility issues, helping them become aware of applying for an absentee ballot, if that may be a better way for them to vote by mail or using the drop box. And again, the Board of Elections in Perry is very accessibility friendly, in my opinion. So if you're able to get to Perry to vote, that's a great place to vote.
I would just say make sure as well that, so if an absentee ballot isn't the right choice for you, which, and I know in Armando's case that one might be a little bit more difficult for him. And for him, it was important to learn when the city or when the county was doing logic and accuracy testing on the machines. So that's when, about 5 days prior to the election, they do a public demonstration of all of the voting machines where you can, see how they're working and how to use each one. Well, like I said, I hate to use you as an example, Armando, forgive me. He needs the one that speaks to you. That reads the screen off to you while you're voting. And he's had issues multiple times where he's gone and that particular machine is not working at his polling location. So that was, that's an important thing to consider. Like I said, it's posted on the Board of Elections website right now, actually, when the next period for logic and accuracy testing is. Go down there, take a look at the machines, see how they work, make sure the one that you need or the one that, someone that may need is in good working order, and ask while you're there who you can report it to if it's not working. I know for the last municipal election, we had a lot of issues with our elderly and disabled voters. When they put the voting machines all the way down the hall in Pavilion instead of right there when you walk in the door, there's no seating in there. It's a very long walk. That caused a lot of people some issues, right? And that was one of those things that we had, we called the Board of Elections and we were like, hey, this is happening here. Like, this is unacceptable. One, like, there's got to be some sort of seating. The line to vote first, if you're elderly or disabled, is longer than the line to vote regular. We need to know how to communicate about those things and how to get help with them so that they don't happen again, or how to stop them from happening while they're occurring.
I also know Armando is really concerned about public transportation in our county. We are one of the largest counties in the state and one of the few that have a military installation that do not have public transportation. And I also want to just, say as advocates, our city, our county, and our school board all got ARPA funds, which is, federal investment that came directly down to the municipal level from the federal government. We have the largest investment of federal resources since the New Deal, and that money needs to be put into communities to meet the needs of our folks, right? And that money came because you voted in 2020, and because we have 2 senators, a president, and y'all save democracy. So we need to apply pressure to get those resources. CARES Act, ARPA funds, COVID, infrastructure package. So cities, counties, and school board probably got the largest amount of federal investment, have those resources, and we need to know where they are, how they're being utilized, who's getting the contracts, and we can have public transportation. They can all come together. It could have been in the SPLOST fund, right? To have one accessible van to make sure that folks who need that assistance with transit can get back and forth to the polls.
And I could be wrong, but I thought I heard, is there some type of partnership with Lyft and Uber where they can take people?
Depends on the election,
Yes.
but they do offer, a code a lot of times, a discount code. I think that's like up to $20 that will get you, at least to the polls.
Oh,
And
that's
it's a
nice.
lot of, mostly in larger communities as well, right? So.
All right, so.
We have a question in the audience, real quick.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment. We're speaking about the voting precincts. I drive past 2 to go all the way to Perry to vote. And it is, thanks to Attorney Williams, she explained to me about the office in Perry. And it is very accommodating. It's a long drive for me to get to that office, but to park right at the door, no inclines, no steps. And I went week before last to vote, and I was the only person there. When I voted earlier, it was only myself and one other person. And at the Pavilion, it is very disheartening. You have to be really in your heart, you know, I have got to vote. But going in there makes you question some things. Right. Thank you.
the newer early vote location that a lot of people don't know about is the new rec center, North House and Sports Complex. There's never a line there. I wouldn't recommend that for people that have mobility issues because it is a long way from the front door, from the parking lot to the front door to the building. But if you're, if you're working, you need to get in and out. You've only got a few minutes after you get off. There's never like that. There's never a line at North House and Sports Complex if you just need to pop in and out. But again, Perry is going to be your best option. If you can't be on your feet for that long. But this is something that we should also, reiterate to our Board of Elections this year and say, hey, how can we make, the locations in both Warner Robins and Perry more accessible for everyone that needs to use them.
We also want to make sure that we are using these early voting locations so that they can't use their underuse as a reason not to have them. Because it is expensive to have these polling locations. You got to have the poll workers there and the equipment. So it is important for us to use them. Because if we underuse them in this election, then they may say, okay, well, they didn't use them, so when you get to a bigger election, you won't have them, and we'll be back to having these 2.5-hour waits in heat with no water if we do that.
Yeah. And then that's intentional too.
It is intentional.
Too, right? Because we can have voting centers, we can invest the resources. SB 202 restricted local boards of elections from receiving outside grant funds to administer nonpartisan elections and hire additional poll workers. It all ties back to policy.
Right. It's definitely intentional.
Thank you. This has been some great information that's been shared, and we're going to try to start wrapping this up now. We thank you for the questions that have been presented via social media as well as on YouTube, and thank you guys for giving, because we can have this conversation going on and on and on. I think that Brian has one more question, and then after Brian, I want to wrap it up, and we'll move in the direction of adjourning.
Yeah, and that's great. And so, once again, I do want to say that I'm so excited. This is a great conversation. And one of the problems that I do have, and it's not really a problem, but everybody who's in attendance, y'all kind of know what to do. I want to figure out how we can do this next time to get the people who are not so knowledgeable or know what to do to get this, to hear this information, because y'all are dropping gems. I mean, so this is my last question. It's pretty much a scenario, and this is probably a good question for Kristen, but all three you do have the opportunity to answer. So the polls are about to close, and I just got in line. A poll worker or someone pretending to be a poll worker is telling me to go home. What should I do?
Stay exactly where you're at. If you are in line before the polls close, you can vote. It doesn't matter if you're in line for 2 hours after that.
So you can get there at
stay in line. If you
6:58. Yeah.
You can. I've personally walked someone in at 6:58, and so there was somebody. We were at Pavilion one night, and someone needed help getting out of their vehicle. I helped her get. I was there as a poll watcher. I helped her get inside. If you are there before 7 o'clock, you can go in, you can vote. Don't anybody tell you differently. If you show up at the wrong location at 6:58 on election day, let's say like at any time after 5 p.m., they will let you vote provisionally. If you're, like my precinct is now the VFW. It used to be the Career Center. Keep an eye on those things because they do change. If let's say I showed up to Pavilion and I'm supposed to vote in county elections at the VFW, they'll let me vote at Pavilion anytime from 5 o'clock on with a provisional ballot. But I would say that if you can make it to your regular polling location, do. Anytime before 5 o'clock, they're going to tell you to leave and go to where you're supposed to be. So, make sure before every election you're logging into your My Voter page. It's mvp.sos.ga.gov.
Say that again.
mvp.sos.ga.gov. And like Erica showed you where she got her precinct card from, you can print it from there. It tells you where you're supposed to vote, what districts you're in, so that when you get there, you know which ones are supposed to be on your ballot. Serves as...
Well, it's public record.
Serves as a source of information for you. And it's super easy. You don't have to create an account or anything. They just have you enter your first initial, your last name, and your birthday, and it pulls your information right up. You can even check to see if your absentee ballot has been accepted there. That's a great resource. But, to answer the basic question, don't anybody tell you that you need to leave unless there are, unless there's a real chance that you're at the wrong place. And if you are at the wrong place, have them pull you up and tell you what the right one is before you go.
Well, I think that a wealth of information has been shared today. We have a ton of questions that we still have that we could ask, but we're not going to ask them today. What I would like to say to the panelists is I would like to partner with you guys going forward as the chair of Advocate for Social Justice, and I do have my co-chair in the back too who does not like to be in front of the camera. But what we would like to do is ask you if there are any nuggets, any information that we can help to relay to the community, then please, please, please inform us so that we can get the information out on behalf of our chapter, whether it be upcoming elections that are coming up. It could be just things that you need to know before going to the polls. We want to make sure that we're answering the questions before they're asked, and if they are asked, that we can get the answers to those questions. One thing I did have was a question it says, I'm not 18, but I will be by election day. Can I still register to vote? And some information I found was in the state of Georgia, you can register 6 months prior to turning 18. And so when we've registered high school students to vote, they've been extremely excited about the opportunity to vote for the first time. And so if you have a teenager, you know of teenagers, or this is something to share with the high schools, that in the state of Georgia, they can register to vote 6 months prior to turning 18. Some information that I received from someone who's wasn't able to be present about the Georgia absentee voting. There are 3 ways that you can return your absentee ballot. No matter which way you choose to return your ballot, it must be received by your county elections office no later than 7 p.m. on election day, because we've been talking about absentee voting. After your county election officials verifies your signature on your absentee ballot application, you will receive your absentee ballot package in the mail. The absentee ballot package you will receive will contain your official absentee ballot, a ballot envelope, an absentee ballot instructions, and a return envelope. Once you receive your absentee ballot package, fill out your ballot according to the instructions provided. Then insert your completed ballot in the ballot envelope and place them both in the return envelope. Seal the return envelope and complete the oath on the back by signing your name. So these are the 3 ways. Mail your ballot after applying sufficient postage. 1 55-cent stamp is sufficient for all ballot packages except in Gwinnett County, which requires 70 cents. Allow at least 5 days for mailing to ensure that your ballot is received by your county elections officials no later than 7 p.m. on election day. Number 2, return your ballot to your county elections office. Number 3, drop it in a secure drop box that your county elections office has set up. For the elections, the State Election Board has allowed counties to set up secure drop boxes to facilitate the return of absentee ballots. Not all counties have secure drop boxes, so check your county elections website or call your county elections office to check. So those are some tidbits that you need to know as it relates to Georgia absentee voting. I want to, at this time, if we can get the microphone to the president of Sigma Epsilon Omega chapter, Ms. Karen Dr. Thomas, to bring greetings.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. So I just want to say this today has been wonderful. This is a very impressive setup to the podcast team, to the Soul Fresh podcast crew. I think this is great. To the panelists here today, thank you for educating us. Thank you for helping us to be empowered and then going forward and helping someone else. And so also I wanted to just reiterate, let's give them a hand first. Let's give them a hand. So I just wanted to take a moment to say, when you talked about the numbers, it made the hairs on my arm stand up. And so if nothing else happened today, it increased my passion. I feel your passion for political participation, for voter mobilization. And I want to say that after today, I'm making a commitment to do more. And so I hope that each one of us here today will take something from here, that your political participation passion level has been increased. I hope, if nothing else, that that's the case. Think about why you're voting, like she said.
why we're voting, why it's so important. We hit a lot of highlights today, and I think going forward, we can internalize those and make a difference in our community here in Middle Georgia. I just want to say also thanks to the sponsors and the Curtis Center, the 100 Black Men. Congratulations on your new chapter. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, to our chairman of the Connection and Social Action Committee, thank you for coordinating this. Thank you for leading the charge and bringing this together. It's been wonderful. Also, thank you to the Georgia Connection Social Action team of our sorority. Maisha Good is the chairman, and we want to thank her team for marketing this and helping get the word out to our social media virtual audience. Also, our panelists, again, thank you so much. I've learned so much today, and I'm just so impressed, I'll say it again, with the setup, with the podcast and the crew. So thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us help you lead and make a difference here in Middle Georgia. Thank you.
We've acknowledged, but we can't say thank you enough. And so I want to say thank you to the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Sigma Epsilon Omega chapter. Thank you guys for being present. Thank you for sharing this information on social media with your friends and letting people know. This is the first of many opportunities for us to get the word out about what Sigma Epsilon Omega is doing here in the Houston County area. Thank you again to the 100 Black Men of Warner Robins. Thank you, Lord, to our youth Leadership Institute participant who welcomed people in as they came in today. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you, Fanika. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you, Erica, for the wealth of information and knowledge that you've shared. Thank you to the Soul Fresh podcast crew, my brothers, for sharing your technology and your information. And that's Brian, that's Stephen, and even Tron over there. Thank you so much. I want to remind people that are watching to follow us on social media. We are a Sigma Epsilon Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and tomorrow we will be showing pictures as well as additional information about what our committee, the Advocate for Social Justice Committee, will be doing on our page. And so if you have an opportunity to view our page, don't just view it, like it. When we post things, like it, share it. And hashtag that we use to track our pictures and our videos is hashtag SEO, AKA advocate. Again, that's hashtag SEO, AKA advocate. So if you ever are looking for pictures or information, that's the hashtag that you can use on social media to be able to find that information. And even if you post pictures or videos from today, if you can use that hashtag, that can allow us to go back to retrieve those pictures and videos. So again, that's hashtag SEO, AKA advocate. Thank you all so much for coming out today. Thank you for those that have viewed and shared this broadcast, because it will be out there on YouTube as well as Facebook on your Soul Fresh Podcast page.
I'm going to end it and mention that at the end.
Okay, awesome. So we definitely want to share it. A wealth of information has been shared today that is not just useful for today, but it's useful for going forward. It's useful for other organizations to use. And I'm looking forward to additional partnerships and opportunities to collaborate to just make people informed and to get people not just registered, but also to get them to the polls. So thank you.
All right. Thank you once again for checking us out. You heard it here. J. Steve, go ahead and tell us where they can follow us.
You can follow us on all your social medias, wherever you get your social media: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you go. That's at the Soul Fresh Podcast.
All right, and we are here at 2050 Watson Boulevard. That is the Curtis Center. So please contact the Curtis Center for all your event needs. That is 478-213-4720. That's 478-213-4720. Please get out and vote. Once again, Fanika, Erica, Kristen, thank you for answering the phone.
Thank you.
And Torri, thank you for contacting me and wanting to network and do this partnership. I hope we can do some more stuff in the future.
Absolutely.
And as we always say, I'm your host, BK.
And I'm your host, J. Steve.
Go vote.